Jesus said something to Saint Faustina that made her tremble with fear. It was 1937, in the middle of the night, when he appeared in her room with an expression she had never seen before. It wasn't the merciful face from the images. It was something that paralyzed her completely. And what he revealed that night wasn't recorded in popular books. It was hidden in pages few Catholics read, because the warning was so direct, so personal, so inconvenient that most prefer to ignore it. But ignoring doesn't change reality. It only makes the consequences worse. And you might be making exactly the mistake Jesus warned about. You might be living a spiritual illusion that looks like faith, but is just empty religiosity. And when you discover it, it might be too late. That's why, if you're not subscribed yet, subscribe now. Because what comes next will change how you see your own salvation. Also, write in the comments where you're watching this video from. I want to know how many people around the world are willing to face truths that make us uncomfortable. Because the truth Saint Faustina received isn't comfortable, but it's necessary. Let's talk about something many priests avoid mentioning from the pulpit. Saint Faustina didn't just have beautiful visions of mercy. She had encounters that left her terrified. Encounters where Jesus showed her realities about hell, about lost souls, about Catholics who thought they were saved but weren't. And this specific warning happened at a crucial moment in her life. She was already sick, weak, close to death, but Jesus came with an urgency she couldn't ignore. Because it wasn't just a message for her. It was a message for the Church, for you, for this exact moment in history. Saint Faustina wrote in her diary with trembling hands that morning, "I saw Jesus with an expression of severity I had never witnessed. His eyes, which were always of infinite compassion, now burned with something that made me fall to my knees. And he said words I will never forget." But before revealing those words, you need to understand the context. Saint Faustina was known as the Apostle of Divine Mercy. Her mission was to spread the message of God's infinite love. So why would Jesus come with severity? Why would the face of mercy transform into something that caused fear? Because there's something many Catholics don't understand. God's mercy isn't automatic. It's not a right, it's a gift that needs to be received, and you can refuse this gift without even realizing it. You can close the doors of your heart while thinking they're open, and that's exactly what Jesus came to warn about. Saint Faustina reported that Jesus showed her something specific that night. He allowed her to see souls that were being lost eternally. And the most shocking detail? Many of these souls were Catholic, people who went to Mass, people who prayed, but something crucial was missing. Now pay close attention to what Jesus said to her. The exact words recorded in her diary. "Daughter, when I come in my mercy, many do not believe. When I come in my justice, it will be too late. Tell souls not to waste time, because the time of mercy will not last forever." Saint Faustina was confused. How can there be an end to mercy if God is infinitely merciful? And Jesus explained something that completely changed her understanding. God's mercy is infinite, yes, but there's a moment for each soul where the door closes. Not because God closes it, but because the soul itself chooses not to enter. And then Jesus showed her something that made her cry for days. He allowed her to see the exact moment when some souls crossed that line. And you know what was most devastating? They didn't realize it. They continued living, breathing, going through their routines, but spiritually they were already dead. Saint Faustina described it as a door closing in slow motion. She saw these souls making small choices, apparently insignificant, postponing conversion, postponing confession, postponing life change. And with each postponement, the door closed a little more, until one day it was completely closed. Jesus explained to her that the greatest danger isn't obvious grave sins. It's lukewarmness. It's the illusion that there's time. It's thinking, "I'll convert later." It's living a superficial faith thinking that's enough. And the most terrifying part? The person can be in this state now and not know it. Saint Faustina saw something specific that marked her deeply. She saw a Catholic soul, a person who attended church every week, who at the moment of death called out to Jesus. But Jesus didn't come. And Saint Faustina asked, "Why?" The answer was terrible, because she never really knew me. This revelation destroyed any illusion Saint Faustina had about superficial religiosity. Jesus showed her that it's possible to do all the right Catholic practices, but with a heart totally distant from him. It's possible to go to Mass out of obligation, not out of love. It's possible to pray empty words without real connection. And then Jesus asked her a question that Saint Faustina recorded as the most terrifying question I ever heard. He asked, "How many souls think they know me, but actually only know ideas about me?" And she saw multitudes within the church who were spiritually lost. Saint Faustina reported that Jesus explained the danger of familiarity with sacred things. When you grow up in Catholic faith, you can get so used to sacraments, prayers, and rituals that they lose their power. You receive the Eucharist, but without real reverence. You go to confession, but without true repentance. Jesus showed her something that made her question everything. He allowed her to see two people at Mass. One was there for the first time in life, full of doubts but with an open heart. The other was a practicing Catholic for decades. And around the first person there was light, around the second, darkness. Saint Faustina didn't understand. How can someone who practices faith for so long be in darkness while a beginner is in light? And Jesus explained, because the beginner has hunger and thirst, has humility, knows they need me. But the other got used to it. Practices religion out of habit, without hunger, without thirst, without real need. And then came the most direct warning. Jesus told Saint Faustina, "Tell souls that the greatest tragedy isn't dying in obvious mortal sin. The greatest tragedy is dying thinking everything is fine when it isn't. It's discovering too late that religiosity wasn't relationship." There's a detail of this revelation that Saint Faustina almost didn't record. It was too heavy. She described having seen Jesus' face when he looked at these souls being lost through lukewarmness. And it wasn't anger, it was something much worse. It was deep sadness. It was the pain of a love rejected without the rejected one realizing it. Saint Faustina wrote, "I saw tears in Jesus' eyes, and each tear was for a soul he called, but that didn't truly respond. Souls that said yes with their mouths, but no with their lives. And the weight of those tears was heavier than any condemnation." Jesus showed her a specific pattern. He called these souls through events, through trials, through moments of grace. But the response was always the same. Later, I'll pray more. Later, I'll change. Later, I'll truly surrender. And that later never came, until time ran out. Saint Faustina saw something that disturbed her for years. She saw souls that had one last chance for true conversion, a final moment where God offered special grace. But they were so used to ignoring his voice that they didn't even recognize when he spoke for the last time. Jesus explained to her the danger of spiritual procrastination. Each time you feel a call to change and don't respond, your heart gets a little harder. Each time you feel God's touch and ignore it, it becomes harder to feel the next time, until one day you don't feel anything anymore. And Saint Faustina asked Jesus, "But don't these people have excuses? Don't they know they need to change?" And the answer was devastating. They know, every soul knows, but they prefer not to know. They create layers of justifications, of self-deception, until the truth is completely buried. After this revelation, Saint Faustina understood something that completely changed her mission. Divine mercy isn't just about God's love. It's a final call, an urgent warning. It's God saying, "There's still time, but time is running out. Come back to me now, not tomorrow, now." Jesus explained to her that the message of mercy is also a message of urgency, because mercy is available now, in this moment, but there's no guarantee it will be available tomorrow. Not because God changes, but because you can harden your heart to the point of no longer being able to respond. Saint Faustina saw that Jesus' warning wasn't to create paralyzing fear, it was to create holy urgency. It was to wake people from the illusion that they have infinite time, from the illusion that they can continue in lukewarmness and everything will be fine in the end, because it won't be. Jesus showed her that the criterion of judgment isn't how many times you went to church. It's whether you really knew him, whether you had a real relationship with him, whether you truly loved or just fulfilled rituals. And this is a truth many Catholics don't want to face. Saint Faustina understood that religiosity without relationship is one of the enemy's greatest traps, because you feel safe. You think, I'm a practicing Catholic, so I'm saved. But Jesus made it clear, it's not enough to be a practicing Catholic. You must be a true disciple. The revelation showed something crucial about confession. Jesus explained to Saint Faustina that many people confess, but without true repentance. They confess because it's an obligation, not because they want real change. And a confession without true purpose of amendment doesn't produce transformation. It's just empty ritual. Now stop and be completely honest. When was the last time you felt God touching your heart, asking for change? How many times did you ignore it? How many times did you say, later? Because each time you do this, the door closes a little more, and you might not notice. The warning Jesus gave Saint Faustina isn't ancient history. It's for you now, at this exact moment. Because if you made it this far in this video, it's not a coincidence. It's one more chance, one more call. And the question is, will you ignore it again? Or will you finally truly respond? Think about your spiritual life honestly. Do you know Jesus, or do you just know things about Jesus? Do you have a living relationship with him, or do you just practice a religion? When you pray, do you really talk to someone, or just repeat words? These questions determine your eternity. Saint Faustina saw that most people who are lost aren't convinced atheists, they're lukewarm Catholics, people who think they're fine because they go to Mass on Sundays, but who live Monday through Saturday as if God doesn't exist. And in the end, they discover God didn't know them either. Jesus said something to Saint Faustina that should make every Catholic tremble. Many will come to me saying, Lord, Lord, and I will say, I never knew you. And Saint Faustina asked, how is it possible that practicing Catholics aren't known by you? The answer, because they never allowed me to truly know them. The problem isn't God not wanting to know you. It's you not letting him. You maintain layers of protection, of self-deception, of justifications. You go to church, but don't truly open your heart. Confess sins, but don't surrender control of your life. And this is what Jesus warned about through Saint Faustina. Saint Faustina spent her last years desperately trying to transmit this warning, but she faced resistance even within the church itself, because no one wants to hear that their religiosity might not be enough. No one wants to question whether they really know Jesus. It's easier to continue in the illusion. But Jesus was clear with her. Time is running out. Not in a general apocalyptic sense, but in a personal and urgent sense. Each person has a limited time of available mercy, a limited number of calls, and when that number runs out, the possibility of true conversion ends. Saint Faustina saw that the greatest deception is thinking there's always another chance, that you can continue in lukewarmness and convert on your deathbed. But Jesus showed her that deathbed conversion only happens for those who kept their heart minimally open during life. If you spend decades hardening your heart, ignoring calls, choosing lukewarmness, when death comes you won't be able to convert, because true conversion requires a heart capable of responding. And if you destroyed that capacity through years of spiritual neglect, there will be no final conversion. Jesus explained to Saint Faustina that the grace of final conversion is a rare gift. It's not guaranteed to anyone. It's given by pure mercy to those who, even fallen, maintained some openness to God. But for those who completely close their hearts, not even in the last hour will there be possibility of true repentance. And Saint Faustina cried when she understood this, because she saw how many Catholic souls were on this path. How many people went to church every week but were progressively hardening their hearts, thinking they were safe when in reality they were digging their own condemnation. There's a question Saint Faustina asked herself every day after this revelation. If I died now, would Jesus recognize me as someone who truly knew him? And this is the question you need to ask yourself now. Without self-deception, without justifications, just the naked truth. Because in the end, nothing else will matter. Not your successes, not your achievements, not how many times you went to Mass. The only thing that will matter is whether you knew Jesus, whether you had a real relationship, whether you truly loved. Everything else is secondary, and many will discover too late that they focused on the secondary. Saint Faustina understood that Jesus' warning was both severe and loving. Severe because truth is hard, but loving because God doesn't want anyone to be lost. He warns, he calls, he offers chances, but respects freedom, and if you choose to ignore, he doesn't force. The revelation showed that God does everything possible to save each soul, but there's a limit to what he can do without violating your free will. And when you use your freedom to reject his calls repeatedly, there comes a moment when there's nothing more he can do. But if you're watching this now, there's still time. The fact that you made it this far, that these words are touching your heart, is a sign that the door hasn't closed yet. But it might be very close to closing, and the decision you make now might be the most important of your life. Now, I don't have very good news. I think it's incredible to create these videos, but they generate a lot of work for me, and the only way I can continue is by reaching 1,000 subscribers, because that way I start receiving from YouTube. If you enjoy our videos, don't let this channel die. Subscribe to the channel and share our videos, because messages like this need to reach more people, need to wake more souls. Each subscription, each share, is a way to participate in this mission to alert those who can still be alerted. Don't underestimate the power of a simple gesture.